Welcome, everyone, back after a short break. And I'm delighted to introduce you to Claudia Moriel, who is the Light Guide. And her work, she likes to say that she's at the crossroads between science and spirituality. So we're going to have a really interesting conversation today around the Lucia number 3. And so to start us off today, Claudia, could you please share a little bit about your background and what led you to the Lucia number 3 light?
Absolutely. I'd just love to say I'm tuning in here from Boston, Massachusetts, and there's my Lucia light right there. And we're here in my studio in Framingham, where I see clients. And I discovered the Lucia light in Vancouver, Canada. So I was in Canada at a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat. It was my 4th week-long retreat. And I didn't think that anything would ever blow my mind more than what I had been experiencing at these retreats. And at the end of my 4th retreat, I was invited to an art studio, and there was I forget her name, but you were having her speak, I think.
Ina?
Yes. So she was there with many of her lights, and I got to experience them. And from the first moment that it started shining on me, I just knew there was something very special about this light. And I went for a full session a couple days later. And after my first full session, I knew I wanted to have a light.
Beautiful. And so what's your why, or what was your interest in sharing it? Like what happened in your first experience that you knew that you really wanted to share this with others?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had accomplished so much at the Dr. Joe retreats. I actually healed myself of an autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's, and had really wonderful visions and experiences. And yet, when I had a session with the light, I went even deeper. I had about an hour session, and I said, put it to the max. I just want it all. And I felt connected to divine source. I felt connected to whatever you would consider to be God. And at the end of it, I felt full of love, and I was crying, and I couldn't like really speak for a little while. And I felt like anybody who looked into my eyes in that moment would have known what divine love was. And I knew I had to bring that to the world.
That's so beautiful. Yes, that oneness feeling, right? Oh,
Yeah.
so wonderful. And what has been your personal experience with working with the Lucia? Do you use it often? Has the cadence changed over the years since you've been working with it?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved a lot. It's so wonderful. It's been a true journey. I started out with a home portal. I remember I contacted you and I said, if anyone's ever selling a home portal, let me know. Because I was very committed to buying a used light because I wanted to know that if there was a light out there that wasn't being used to its capacity, I wanted to bring it out more. I don't know where this idea came from for me, but it was very important to me. And I did a fundraiser for it. So I raised $4,000 through a fund me to purchase one. And at the end of the fundraiser, you contacted me and said, there is a light for sale for about 6,000. And I was like, I snatched it up. So it was fun. I did it a lot when I first got it. I used it every day, sometimes twice a day. I think I even was doing like 8 sessions in a day for people and contacted you and said, is there too much light that somebody can do? And then what I started noticing was that as I started doing sessions for people and as I was holding space for people, I started getting these downloads. So my intuition really started opening up more than it ever was. I've always been very intuitive naturally anyway. And it's always been something I've strived and worked to develop in myself further, taking courses in mediumship and channeling and just studying as much as I can. But as I was holding space for people, I started getting all these downloads and all these images, and I would try to remember everything. But as some people know, when they're under the light, they get all these downloads and all these images, but everything is moving at the speed of light. So you can't quite grasp everything or remember everything all the time. So I would try my best to remember everything. And then I would review the session with my clients afterwards. And what we started finding was that we were having the same experience. What I was seeing is what they were seeing in their own way. But, someone said, I saw my brother, and I said, I saw all of these like cloves, like 4-leaf clovers coming out. And she's like, my brother, we are Irish, so it was like his way of saying he passed. And so the more and more I did that, the more and more I connected with my clients, but I couldn't remember everything. So I started writing it down. So my journey as a practitioner has been from trying to remember everything and review it with people to beginning to write down my intuitive hits. And at the end of our session, I review these notes with people, and they're like, that's what I got. And then we were starting to realize that we were getting the same intuitive hits at the same time during the session as well. So it's been a great journey of trust, and it also started out that people would say, this is what I want to know about. So then I would write about that. But lately, people have been saying, just write about whatever comes to you. And that was a really scary moment as well, because it's easy to answer someone's question, but whatever comes to me, like, what if I get it completely wrong? But it's been an opening.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And you said you were always kind of intuitive before. Did you do anything like that with your work, or is this something that was more of a private passion that kind of stepped forward when you were working with Lucia?
I had, yes, it's interesting. My background is actually as a makeup artist. So I've been a makeup artist for 20 years now. But because I'm a freelancer, I've always had a lot of time off. So in all my time off, I went to yoga teacher training, which then led me to a 3-year energy medicine school, which then led to Reiki practitioner and so forth and so on. So it's something I've always been curious about and developing. And at first, I didn't understand it, but then when I started going to all these schools, I started understanding what all these feelings I had were that led to events of synchronicity.
Beautiful. Yes. And speaking of synchronicity and your clients, could you share a little bit about some of the most touching experiences that you've had holding space for clients, or even one of those?
Oh my goodness. Okay, let me think about that. There are so many. Sometimes I'll see my clients under the light, and you see this moment that happens. The room kind of goes still, and that like everything just sort of slows down, and that's the moment when they connected to their highest source, to what they came here for. And then the next thing you know, you start to see tears. And I can tell, like, they're not tears of pain. These are tears of like bliss and joy. And that's the moment. That's the magic moment that I sit here for, like client after client.
So beautiful. And do you do anything before the sessions to help prepare your clients to drop into that space?
Yes, we do a lot of work beforehand. People come in, they have a seat. I make sure they have water because water is so important when you're working with the Lucia Lite. And then I make sure that they're incredibly comfortable. And we have about a 20-minute conversation. And we talk about what's either challenging them or what they want to expand on. A session doesn't have to be about just what's challenging you. It can also be about where you want to grow and where you want to expand. I've worked with people who are professional. They play professional sports and have gotten better at playing their sport. So it can be expansion as well. And based off of what they talk about, that's when my intuitive hits start coming. It's like this part of me opens up, and then I choose programs based off of those intuitive hits. And sometimes people will say something like, having a really hard time connecting with my husband. They'll choose a program like Right Words. Or someone will say, I'm just really stuck in this negative thought loop. So I'll choose the program called Overcoming Negative Energy. And then some people want to expand their consciousness, and then we can move into programs like LSD and DMT.
Great. And what sessions do you love the most yourself? Are there any that you use over and over again?
Absolutely. Yes. Three favorite sessions are Angel, which you mentioned in one of the other chats. Oh, that's my absolute favorite. And a lot of my clients enjoy that one as well. And then Transcendent Mirrors also happens to be one of my favorites. And DMT, any of the DMT ones I love. I feel like those are very heart opening.
Yeah, powerful and very intense. Do you ever have clients who find the light too intense? And what do you
Definitely.
do in those situations?
So something that you can do with a light is you can keep the intensity of a program higher. Like, if you're doing a psychedelic session per se, I turn the brightness down. And that tends to allow people to really go into a beautiful experience. One of my clients was having a very hard time with the brightness. And Angel, I think, is that a medium or a strong session? I forget.
I think that's technically strong, but it stays low for a while, and then just towards the end, it kind of builds up.
Yeah. So she was having a hard time in Angel, but I turned the brightness all the way down, and it was the best session she ever had.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. And for anyone out there listening, if you are sensitive to the light yourself, you can do this for yourself. So if you have the home portal, you have the mouse, and on the mouse there's actually like a little roller pad. So if you have that connected to the lamp during your session, you can actually turn down the brightness for yourself if you're sensitive. And I absolutely agree with you. It's amazing that, there's actually no limitation on what sessions you can do as long as you kind of find that brightness intensity level that works with your nervous system. And yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you, Claudia.
I also
And
never really push people either. Like, if they find it to be too intense, I always keep them on a easy session too. That's super helpful as well.
yeah, so you always go through the demonstrations with them first, correct? Yes.
Absolutely.
And so for anyone who is listening again too, who works with clients, we really recommend that you do those demos because you get to tune in to where they're at. And all of us can be different in different days, and unless you're like Engelbert, right, and really kind of pushing people to get over their anxiety or really, consciously doing that work of triggering them, when we want to find out ways to meet them where they're at while giving them the sovereignty to choose that themselves, right? So
Right. And I even do the demos on my clients every single time they come in, even if they're monthly clients. I still do those demos every single
mm, yeah, so good. Yes, that's very interesting. It's very helpful, and it's wild how different it can be each day.
time.
Um, Amazing. And yeah, so after you've kind of developed all this with the Lucia Light, like what's your vision moving forward? I know you're kind of expanding in different ways. Could you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I feel like frequency is the future. I feel like that's why I say that I live at the crossroads of science and spirituality. Frequency comes in so many different ways. It comes in light and sound and electricity, and it's so healing and so accessible. It's as if it's the language that our mind, body, and spirit speaks. So I just know that I want to continue to bring frequency. You can't officially call it medicine, but frequency healing or frequency well-being, to continue to bring it to the greater public and teach people and educate people on why and how it works so that they can understand it. I think what Dr. Joe did for me the best was explain brainwaves. I'd been trying to meditate, I'd been trying to have a solid practice, and I just couldn't make that connection. And then as Dr. Joe explained, oh, it's your brainwaves, and this is what's happening, and then your body's reacting this way, it all clicked. And if we can bring that knowledge to people, I feel like that's the future and how bring this on a bigger scale.
Beautiful. Yeah. So after that, knowing that, if someone came up to you and said, Claudia, what is the Lucia #3? What would you say?
Well, I would say that it's the best way to explore your consciousness in a completely safe environment. I know that there's a huge psychedelic movement, and I'm a big part of that and a big proponent of it as well. But I know that it's not for everybody, and that not everybody feels safe or comfortable ingesting a psychedelic. So it's a wonderful way to have the benefits of what a psychedelic experience brings to you with the neural reset, with the brainwave reset. And you're always in a safe environment. I'm always right there next to everybody. You could turn the light off at any time. So I let people know it's a really safe way to explore your potential, to rewire your thinking, to maybe even have a physical healing.
Beautiful. And a few different people have had varying views on working with psychedelics in combination with the Lucia #3. So I thought it's a hot topic. We can tune in on that for a moment. Have you had any experience with that, or how do you feel about that in general?
Absolutely. I'm someone who has to experience everything in order to be able to speak about it. So I do a lot of different things so that I have that sort of jumping off point. I've definitely used the Lucia Light in conjunction with psilocybin, mostly when I was on the end of the journey. And I found it for me personally to be too intense because the light is so bright. And for me, psilocybin is so intense. But I was like, I have to try it. I have to know what happens for me so I can speak to that. And I just found it for me almost to be competing. Like the light was trying to take me somewhere and the psilocybin was trying to take me somewhere. And I couldn't quite bring them together. And then I was microdosing LSD, and I went under the LSD session, which is quite an intense session under the light to see, like, do these speak together? And I got a little bit of a headache. So that didn't work for me either. And then I tried rapé, which is a form of, I guess you'd call it snuff from the Amazon. And I would do rapé and the light. And those two together worked for me nicely. However, when I did the light the following night without rapé, I enjoyed it more. I don't say that you shouldn't do microdosing or psychedelics with the light, but for me, I find the light to be so powerful on its own and medicines to be so powerful on their own. I don't find the need to mix them.
Yeah, that's a powerful perspective. And, for everyone listening, I think it's a great reminder too of how different all of our systems are, right? And to truly be able to honor that. And as a sensitive person, kind of the more sensitive we are, the less input we need, because you
Mhm.
can overwhelm your processing system. And as Kat was talking about in the last talk, our nervous systems even alone are so unique, right? And so I think that's why there's also no blanket statements about what to do in regard with psychedelics and things like that, because it's really individual. And I think for people who have very strong mental body, maybe they need a little bit more help of getting out of their mind. But I would say in this case that working with breath, for example, can be really powerful.
Absolutely. And I've definitely done breath work with the light, and that I do enjoy together. Breath work and the light together are very nice, very nicely compatible. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And for someone, and I thought it was also very interesting what you said about Hape. And if anyone wants to know, it's RAP, looks like rape, but with the
A
with
little.
the E, like, yeah, I
Yeah,
can't,
very close to what Christine wrote in the chat. Very close. Yeah.
very close, except one P.
Yeah.
And my thoughts on that are maybe that it's dehydrating. So, how you talked about, because it's known for clearing and grounding, which I think is really helpful. But then I've personally found that anything that's like dehydrating doesn't work as well with the Lucia. It's kind of like if you're dehydrated, you can't drop as deep into the experience. which is it's kind of a strange, phenomenon, but so interesting. But because of energy work and things like that as well, you also need to be hydrated, right? So
Yeah. And what I've experienced with that and what I've learned from that is that water carries frequency. So all of the frequency devices that I work with, you need to have water so that you can carry the frequency through the water in your body. And I've started doing a lot of work with water and developing water bottles that I charge with the Lucia Lite. So it's been exciting to expand on what the Lucia Lite can do other than with just people.
yes, I love that. And can you share a little bit more about practices of charging the water? Like how long do you put it under? What session do you choose for that for people that are curious?
Absolutely. Actually, you have one of the bottles right here with me. So they have crystals in the bottles. And so each bottle will have a different color crystal with a different intention. So the one I happen to be holding right now is for the goddess codes. So what I do is I take these crystals, and one of our other light workers, Chris, developed programs for each color. So this bottle tends to have a lot of pink and crystals and some yellow crystals in it. So I'll take the yellow crystals and I'll put them under the Lucia Light and charge those crystals with the yellow frequencies. Even though the white is light, the frequencies are for the color yellow. And then I'll take the pink ones and I'll charge them with the red color frequencies. And then I'll put them into the water bottle and I'll just do the white light.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love using the light to actually clear spaces. I remember someone asking me once, "Oh, wow, do you really need to clear the space a lot? Because people really release a lot energetically in the light." And my response personally, I find that the light actually just charges up whatever space it's in, and I find that maybe you can clear some like imprints that clients left behind, but the actual space becomes more and more potent as you have more sessions in the same spot. Have you found the same?
Undeniably so. People walk into the studio and they're like, "Oh, it feels so different in here."
Yeah.
Yeah. And someone was like, "You're gonna have to clear the room after this session." I'm like, "Oh no, it's already handled, no problem."
Yeah, the Lucia does a lot of work like that. Although we did have one person in the community who had, just to share for any practitioners out there, who had one really intense session with somebody, and they didn't have a seizure, but it was like borderline, like really, really intense somatic release. And he didn't clear the space, and he ended up the next 3 clients in a row had the same type of experience. So it was very interesting for me because I was like, oh, I don't really need to clear space. I was like, okay, maybe, and he asked me what was going on and da da da. And when I tuned in, it was like, oh my God, you have to clear the space, because if someone has that intense of an imprint, then maybe there's something left there that would still be kind of picked up in the energetic fields by someone else. But I mean, I haven't heard of anyone else having an experience like that, but I thought I would share, just because I found it fascinating.
Yeah. And I find it fascinating that you said you tuned in, and that's the intuition that I feel gets developed with the light. I feel like the more I work with the light, the more she teaches me what I can tune into, what my intuitive gifts can be, and how they can expand. I feel like it's such a beautiful symbiotic relationship between myself and the light. And I have to say, I've had the light since 2020, December 2020. And what I thought was possible then is way beyond where I am right now. Like, I never imagined I would be intuitively writing for 40 minutes while people are under the light and receiving the gifts and messages I am. So people say, can I, how often should I come for the light? How many sessions do I have to do? And I say, there's no limit to what the possibilities are. You can come once. I've had people come once and like lose 90 pounds, and I get the before and after pictures, and I'm shocked. And I've had, people once and just come once and have the best experience, and that's it. And then I have people who come monthly and have come for like 6 months in a row. And the last session one of my dear friends had she couldn't believe she went to where she went to, she's like, I just when I think I've reached the limit, there's more. And I have to say, as a practitioner, it's the same for me.
I love that. And yeah, I absolutely agree. I feel like the Lucia Light works with you, right? To help you, as you said, like speaks to you and helps you develop your intuition. And there's a lot of different types of intuition, right? And receiving information. So, I'm curious for you, Claudia, of how do you receive information? Do you feel like you hear it or sense it or, see it? What comes through for you?
All of them. I do all of them. Sometimes, I'll be sitting and doing the intake form and I'll say to my client, I'm hearing, because I'm hearing. And then, I'm not a medium, but sometimes I will have people's past ones, want to talk to them. And they're very they're almost like knocking, like, excuse me, like, so you feel things. And then while people are under the light and I'm intuitively writing, I see sort of like little movies. So I see little vignettes of things happening and I get a lot of imagery. I had the imagery of someone rising as a phoenix one time. I get little story, one time someone asked me, how do I do what you do? And I saw an image immediately and I said, you will never do what I do because you will paint animals. And I saw animal picture after animal picture after animal picture show up. And now she does that completely as her career. And then sometimes I get a sense and words just come out and I'll say to my client, I get a sense that you're feeling this. Is that, do you feel that? And they're like, oh my God, how did you know? So there's no one way for me.
Yeah. And I think that's a good reminder for everyone too, that, there's not one way to receive messages of intuition and there's no one that's better than the other, right? It's like kind of the more, we can have intentions, just like we can have intentions for our sessions to kind of open up or to open our intuition and tune in deeper. However, like how it shows up, if we can leave that open, then we can start to receive in the way that's really true to us. And that can be, many different ways, or it could be even, I've worked with clients in the past who are like, oh, I really felt something in this part of my body. And so you can get all kinds of information. Your body is kind of like an instrument that's tuning in, right? So it's through our different senses, but also through feeling. And there's no better way to understand intuition. It's all just different depending on the person. Have you had any clients that have felt like their intuition is expanding since working with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say that it's not woo-woo. Like this intuition thing is like, can they now tune into their intuition? Yeah, but it's not because of some mystical, magical thing, but it's because their brainwaves have finally slowed down enough and that they've dropped into their body enough that they can hear the intuition that was always there.
So beautiful. Yes. And I really feel like, in terms of the brain waves too, to just bring it back to that for a moment. We spoke earlier with Engelbert about, kind of coming into harmonics in the brain and also just kind of creating that space where we can reset what's been there before. And so, with the Lucia Light, and I think what you're speaking to is that, beta brain waves can be very fast. And, what we've learned with the Lucia is that it helps take you into the hypnagogic state, but it's not necessarily, and it's really not the exact frequencies that we're using to try to do things, because a lot of the great sessions actually include frequencies at the beta level, which you think that would be, against like the success session is 21 hertz of most of the session. And 21 hertz is in the high beta, which is really intense thinking, so it's been so interesting for me too, because I've also been like, oh yeah, we just have to get into the theta state, and then going through this big realization of like, oh, there is no state like that. And it's almost like a metaphor, right? Even the brain waves, that we're also individual and complicated, that it's really like the symphony inside of our brain of all the different instruments, such as all the different brain waves kind of coming into a place where they actually sound good together. And that can look very different for 4 different people, but it is really also related to that nervous system in terms of being able to slow down and find that spaciousness. So yeah,
Yeah.
went off a little bit there.
Oh, I love it. Because I
It's like,
call the Lucia Lite a new age tuning fork. I was like, it is the newest age tuning fork you'll ever find. You know, we used to use tuning forks. Some people still do, but this is like the futuristic tuning fork, and it helps you tune into that resonance of intuition.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's good. And Michael's asking, do you ever have resistance to sharing some of your intuitive hits with clients, or did you in the beginning? And how would you approach a situation like that?
I do all the time. It's every single time I'm about to read back what I just wrote, I'm always like, am I going to be wrong this time? It is such an exercise in trust that it's like my teacher, my biggest teacher. Have I gotten it wrong? Yes, I have, definitely. And I appreciate when my clients tell me that, because it teaches me to be a better intuitive. And I was like, okay, well then tell me what you got. And it also keeps me humble, I have to say. You know, it keeps me from the spiritual mask, from thinking that I know better than everybody. And I love that. So every single time, it's always scary. And I actually enjoy that part of it.
Great answer. Yes. Leaning into our edges is how we grow, right? And nobody expects perfection either. I can also say that in sharing my intuitive insights that, first being able to really drop into that space, like you mentioned in those 20 minutes, right? It's not like we're just kind of thinking in our mind. It's like something shifts where you start really opening. And so, yeah, could you tell us a little bit about how you curate sacred space to access this intuition and about the light guides that you work with?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I will sit when my clients will come in, and it's almost like you're shifting a gear in a car. You feel that shift as you like move into the intuitive space. And sometimes it's easier than others. I wonder if it's like whatever the client might be coming in with, or whatever might have happened to me in the day. And I have to say, I see clients on Sundays. So it's almost as if my intuition starts to open up on Saturday night, just before they start to come in. So it's almost like I trained my intuition to open at a certain time. And I teach my clients this, who are wanting to work and becoming intuitive. I say your intuition's like a puppy dog. When you first get a puppy, it's wild and it wants to chew on the floorboards and pee on the floor and go outside. And that's what intuition can feel like when you're opening up to it at first. And you might get a hit about this person over there. But I was like, if you take yourself at the same time every morning to journal, and you begin to just journal whatever might be your intuitive hits about yourself, and you do that every day, then your intuition like a puppy dog knows at 8 o'clock it's time to go out and pee, and your intuition goes, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Oh, this is when we go to work. So that's how I've trained my intuition. So on Saturday night, I might start getting hits about my clients who are coming in. I have a fireplace in my an electrical fireplace here in my studio. And it's before clients come in. I use it as a way to burn off like negative, as a symbol to burn off negative energy, but it has different colors. And I'll be like, oh, I don't know. I want to turn it on to green, or I want to turn it on to pink. And the other day I wanted to turn it on to pink, and my client showed up full pink outfit. So these little things start to like open up. And then sometimes if I quite don't feel in the space before I start working, I'll sit with my client and I'll ask them to breathe with me for a few minutes and to just settle into their bodies. And then I'll take them before going into a session through a meditation where I ask them to bring their energy from their head down into their heart, down into their heart. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And do you feel like when you tune in that space that you're receiving messages from your higher self or their higher self or their guides or your guides? Can you differentiate like where the message comes from?
Absolutely. Yeah. sometimes it's from, most of the time, believe it or not, it's from their higher self. And what's been happening lately is I've been seeing people's guides standing around them, or they'll ask me, who's my guide? And I'll, what I've been noticing, which is super interesting and so fun to share about, is that their guides look a lot like them. And I thought, well, this is an interesting coincidence as you start to see the patterns. And then I started hearing, I heard, it's because there is no separation. They are their guides are them. It's another aspect of their higher self and who we are and who they are. So it's almost like a flow. Sometimes it's the light guides, which I've started working with. It's like a group of guides that I just started calling the light guides because we work with a light. And then sometimes it's their higher self or their guide that looks like them. And sometimes it's my higher self, and it just flows just like the information flows from I hear it, I feel it, I see it. It flows through all these different levels of consciousness as well.
Beautiful. And looks like we have a couple questions here in the chat. One from Harrison. How does one start to learn to move through our ego when we receive guidance that comes through under the light or holding space as a guide?
So the ego is, I find it to be a wonderful teacher. I don't resist the ego. I used to. I had a plant medicine experience where it obliterated my ego for a month and I couldn't feel anything for a month. And from that point on, I was like, I miss my ego, please come back. So it's a beautiful teacher. And if we can embrace it. And so sometimes people, even under the light, won't be able to get out of their monkey mind. And you can see them breathing heavy, struggling, shifting around in their chair. And I'm like, that's ego. And so I always tell people, lean in and breathe and relax. So I find that relaxing and not resisting is the best way to move through ego. What's it trying to tell you? What's the message? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What's under that stress or tension, right? And like resistance. And maybe that's also resistance to like being present, because also our nervous system is so wired to be go, 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 that if you're stuck in that go, 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 then it's like, ooh, it's scary to be relaxed. Like what's going to come up? But that's exactly that sweet spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. Okay. And then the question from Christine, wondering if you had a mentor or how your transition went from, working in makeup to working with the Lucia Lite.
Yeah, I have many mentors. One of my favorite mentors is Stephanie. I'm going to write it in the chat right now. Banks. You can Google her. I forget what her website is, but I did 2 extensive trainings with her on channeling. She was incredibly helpful. And Harrison, who wrote earlier, also has a podcast that she's on with him. So you can, the Cosmic Love Antenna. You can look up their podcast together on there. She also has a TED Talk, which is great. So she's one of my mentors. But I find that anytime, like you're one of my mentors, Allison, Harrison is one of my mentors. I feel like so many people have come into my life who've supported me so deeply. So do I have just one? Definitely not. Yeah. And then how did I transition? I'm still transitioning, but I'm closer than ever. But what's really pushing me to transition is seeing people heal, seeing people come out of pain into possibility is the most rewarding work I've ever done in my whole life. And that is what pulls me towards moving into this full time and taking it on full time, which I'm super close to doing. By 2024, I'll be there. But that shift in people, the way their skin changes, their face changes, there is nothing more rewarding, I don't think, that I could ever do.
So beautiful. Yes. Right. It's pretty magical what this light can help us come back to. And when you see people really shine with their own brilliance again, it's like, whoa, so incredible. Great. And Could you, so you say you're giving sessions on Sunday and you're located in Boston, right? Could you share maybe where your location is or your website if anyone wants to follow you?
So my website's finally up. It's even better than it was when you saw it last time, Allison. TheLightGuide.com is where I am. I travel as well. I go to different states, different countries I've been to, and I bring my light everywhere I go. I'm happy to travel and do groups. My Instagram is CLAU_MORIEL. I'm developing a YouTube channel. I'm a little bit slow at getting things done because I'm very meticulous about them. So they're all coming. I would love to come to, I'm actually going to Austin next month, so I'd be happy to go to Houston and do some work there. But yeah, lots to come.
Beautiful. Love it. Wonderful. And so if you look forward to the community of the Lucia Lite and all the different work that we're offering, what kind of future do you imagine for us, or what would be the ideal for now?
I would love us to become just like common conversation. I would love for there to someone say flickering light, psychedelic light, Lucia light, and for the world to know what that is. To have enough people have had sessions that there's like a vibration that goes out into the world that people just start picking up on and going, oh my God, I got to try that. I got to do that. I've heard about this.
Amazing. And what about awakening? What has been your kind of awakening journey or experience? And do you feel aligned with working with clients that are having awakening experiences, or do you tend to find people more working with like the psychedelic integration side of things? Or is it a
Yeah,
combo?
it's a combo. I actually love working with people who are having spiritual awakenings or intuitive awakenings, having been through it, being able to guide people through it. I love working with people who are like sort of at this tipping point of their productivity or their potential. They're, this is what I went through. I'm like, I was right there. I could feel my potential. I could touch it, but I couldn't integrate it. And that's what the Lucia Light helped me do. I've like skyrocketed since I've had it. And that's what I help people do. They're like right at that tipping point, and they're like, I don't know what else to do. And I'm like, come see me because I will get you there.
I love that. A tipping point guide. So good. And finally, what do you send people home with afterwards? So if they come in for a session with you that's really groundbreaking, do you follow up with them the next day? Do you send them, like a little homework to carry on? Or how do you relate that way?
Yeah. Everybody gets the 10 to 12 pages that I write while I'm writing under the light, because I write so fast and so big. So everybody gets to take that home. So they have the vibration of their session with them. But I really feel what people take away with them is that they're like, wow, I did that. Like, even though they were under the light, it wasn't me healing them. It was their entire experience the whole time. Like they get this true sense of connection to, oh my God, I got this. It was because they get the same intuitive hits I got. They no longer feel like I am some sort of special healer or anything. Like I just feel like I really give them the sense of who they are and that they have the healing power within them.
That's so beautiful. Yes. I love that, really bringing their sovereignty back to them and, again, encouraging them to follow their intuition and finding that resonance is really beautiful. I don't think I've heard anyone share before about how they're, asking the clients what they experienced and having written down the same experiences, right? So beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I see Christine's still asking in the chat here.
Oh wow, that sounds amazing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've never been to Joshua Tree, but I'm happy to go.
yeah, totally. Yeah, and location can make a big difference energetically, right, with a session. And for Christine, I would also say that the other thing too to keep in mind is you can create that space. Like Claudia was saying, she creates this really sacred space. And while locations around the world can hold specific and special frequencies, there's something about our presence as a space holder that really also makes it magical. And I'm sure people can feel just from talking to you that you hold this grounded yet lifted presence that's so beautiful and magical. So thank you so much for sharing with us today, Claudia. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, likewise. Thank you for putting this on. This is huge. So glad to be sharing so much information with everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, great. And do you have any last words for anyone out there who's aspiring to become a practitioner or anything like along those lines?
Absolutely. I would say start with the home portal. It's a great place to start. It works just as well as the practitioner's portal. And just start holding space for people in any way that you can, even without the light.
Yes, practicing creating that field. Yeah, so beautiful. Remember, you got to start trying, right, to get anywhere. So you got to get yourself out there and start doing it. So wonderful. Thank you so much. And maybe if you want to put if anyone wants to contact Claudia, it's on your website, right? Or maybe you could type in your email address really quick too.
Typing that in.
And while she does that, just a little reminder to everyone, we are supposed to have one more talk next with Jameson about psychedelic integration and preparation, but unfortunately, he has a throat infection and is not going to be able to talk right now. So this is our last tune in for the moment. And so thank you. Thank you so much, Claudia. And thank you everyone for being here.
Awesome.
All right. All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.